So we're here to look at this place with a view to what's to be done to it. What kind of action plan do we need? And I've just learned that in the plan originally was a new roof. Now I've just had my head and shoulders up in the roof, and I've been and photographed it, and there's nothing wrong with it. Yes, there is deflection in the roof, and that's because there's a huge purlin, that sort of size, that just dipped a little bit. It's nothing wrong with it. It's fine. It can carry the load. It's got some supports under it anyway, so there's nothing wrong with that roof. It just needs a little bit of work, some replacement tiles, and it will be fine for another 50 years. So I wouldn't be putting money into the roof. We'll have an inspection of the roof, and I think we will put some money into new guttering and downpipes because the guttering is too small. Modern rainfall is too heavy for most guttering and overwhelms it, so that in heavy rainfall you get water pouring out of the gutters and off the ends of them. In addition to which, here I've only found one downpipe in the entire house, so it's not capable of removing the water from the roof. So we need new guttering, bigger, deeper, we call them deep flow gutters, and downpipes, and those downpipes will then go into the drainage system that we're going to get surveyed and replaced as we need. So there's some new drainage, there's guttering, there's going over the roof, replacing one or two of the tiles that are cracked or spalled. The external render is cracked, but it's the original. I'm quite impressed. It's a rough cast lime render. It's not in the best of condition, but the reason it's not is because somebody painted it with plastic paint. So we might look at trying to do a test panel and see if we can get the plastic paint off it and get some lime wash onto it so that the external skin can breathe again. I think that's a better way of spending money. If we can do that, I don't think there's much re-rendering to do either. So I would just leave it the way it is, paint it up, linseed paint the windows and door frames where needed. Some of the windows are PVC. We've got a front door that's timber at the moment. I don't know what your thoughts are on replacement. You're giving me that, well, we were thinking about PVC look. No?
Hadn't looked that far into the budget yet.
Okay. Subfloor ventilation we probably need to do something about. We've looked at the steps that go down outside at the rear, and we are pretty sure that those steps have covered up the only ventilation grill there is at the back of the house for the subfloor. And we've looked through the one at the front. We can see that there's a big hole under the floors. It's huge, and it's half filled with rubble. There's blocks of stone and brickwork and so on. So it might be worth us at some point when you take carpets up trying to lift a few boards, get into the subfloor and clean it out so that there's no rubbish holding moisture. We've tested the moisture levels by putting the probe through the floorboards into that void, and we know that we've got about 13 grams of moisture as opposed to 9 or 10 outside here at the moment and in the house. So we know the subfloors are a little bit damp. So from that we have a strategy of improving ventilation, putting a vent at the back, getting that through flow ventilation, and we'll keep an eye on that and at some point drop a probe down once it's been done to see if we've dropped the level sufficiently. And once that's been done, at the same time, if you're cleaning out under the floors, you can check to see if there's any damage to any of the timbers. I don't think there is, because I can see them through the vent. If you shine a torch through, you can actually look at all of the timbers, and they look great. There doesn't seem to be any problem with them. Internally, ground levels are good outside, by the way. I don't have a problem with ground levels. Usually I find ground levels are too high. Here I think it's pretty good. It would be nice to camber the ground levels so that they fall away from the walls, so where the wall comes down, and we camber the ground so that it does that, and then have a little gully, just a shallow gully drain that picks up the water coming off the paving into the gully and take that into a stormwater drain. While we're talking about outside, we have not yet found any drainage covers or gullies of any sort. So we have no idea where the sewage is going. I don't know what's happening. We need to get a drain survey. We need to try and find out what is going on, and that should also be on your deeds. There should be a map of where the sewer lines are, and we need to tie that down. Being an old estate, there probably is a main sewer line that goes through, and that'll be the responsibility of the water authority rather than you, especially if it's going through people's backyards. If you're connected to somebody else, then that pretty much is their responsibility. But they're very old drains. There's one on the front here, there's one at the back, both of which don't look in very good condition. So we need to do something with surface drainage and sort that out. Moving inside, the biggest issue historically has been, and this is the evidence, we've got too much moisture being generated in the building, so we've got to ventilate it better. There's no ventilation in the bathroom. You know all about that. We're going to sort it. There's very poor ventilation to the kitchen. We'll sort that. Then we're having a discussion about plastering. We've got a mix of gypsum and lime. Personally, best case, you take it off and you redo it in lime. That's expensive, and it's probably half or a third of the cost to do it in gypsum, but it's better for the building if we use lime. So there's going to be a financial decision to make. Do you lime plaster them and take them back to what they should be, and then lime wash, or use a distemper paint on the walls? We're not really sure yet. That's a decision that needs to be made. We're not going to know the full extent of lime plastering that's needed until we've taken the remaining wallpaper off, and we need to do that as soon as we can. Ceilings, I don't like the textured wood chip lining paper. I think that's been put on to cover up the cracks in the lath and plaster, and all of these are lath and plaster ceilings, so they're all original and they're great. I can't see any problems with them. If you take the paper off, you'll probably see a few cracks. Well, great. All you do is just rake those cracks out and fill them with lime putty, and they're done. It's not difficult to repair them, and so long as the ceilings aren't detached from the lath, and I've not seen any evidence of them detaching, then they're as good as the day they were put in. So I don't see any problem with those. The floor we're sitting on, I think this is a historic floor. This is hard, solid floor. I think there's tiles, pan tiles underneath this. So you could expose those and just put a rug on it, or leave it carpeted. It's entirely your own choice. I think it might look quite nice in the original tiles, but that's a personal thing. So long as you don't put something on top that traps moisture, those tiles are probably laid on a limecrete base. So if you put a plastic sheet on top, they'll get wet and you'll have damp problems. And those damp problems will transfer into the base of the walls because moisture is driven sideways. I'm not actually seeing a whole heap of other things that need to be done. I think it's a very good buy. You've got yourself a good deal for the money you paid for it, and I think we can work up a budget and a little strategy for sorting the place out. The main thing is the heating system is keeping it heated in winter constantly. So we need to work out whether the boiler that's up here is capable of running constantly. I think it's a fairly modern boiler, so I wouldn't have a problem with that boiler. We'll have a look at the settings on it, but I would turn the feed on the boiler to about 40 or 50 degrees and just leave it ticking over, so that there's constant low temperature heating in the background, which keeps these walls warm. So the walls then become a storage heater, and they will buttress any rapid changes in temperature because these things stay warm. And we were talking about this earlier, that you try and turn the heating on earlier in the year, so when the sun disappears, the nights get longer, but it's still not cold. You want to turn the heating on because you don't want the walls to cool down. It's a bit counter to what people think they should be doing, but keep the walls warm, don't let them cool down, and you won't have any damp problems. So I think we've covered most of what needs to be done. We've got a going over of the roof. We've got to look at the fireplaces. We haven't discussed that. We need to open all of the fireplaces, clean out the flues, the chimney flues, and we need to look at the pots on top of the chimney, which would be done when we do a roof inspection, and we look at guttering and replacement tiles if there's any tiles that need to be done. And we would put pots on the top that have they're like a pepper pot that allow airflow, but they stop rain going in. So we do those, and we also at the same time we look at the lead flashing on the chimney, because there is some water ingress on the chimney in the loft area. So we look at the lead, we do the pots and the flaunching and check that the chimney is nice and watertight and capped properly. Open up the fireplaces. If you want to put a log burner in anywhere, that's the time to do it, because you drop a liner in. You don't want the log burner, that's fine. But what we want is that constant draft of air moving in the chimneys, which is your passive stack ventilation. That's how you remove any moisture from the building. Cheap and cheerful, it does the job. That effectively is it. I can't think of anything else that is annoying me about the place.